Thank you for being our guest today, Lisa.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
So, interesting story about how I knew Lisa. I saw her LinkedIn
I hope it was good.
very often, and then I connected. I think I connected with you first, and then I saw there's a WeChat channel on your LinkedIn profile as well, and then we started chatting. And then I invited her, and then there it is.
Yeah, no, it was very good coffee.
Very good.
Everything's lubricated by coffee. That's very good. Yeah.
Good. So Lisa, being a director at EY, can you describe to us how a typical workday look like?
Right, I knew you were going to ask that question. My answer is there's no typical workday. At that particular level I work at, there's a variety of responsibilities I have to basically look after. I do have a team, fabulous team of 3-4 people that work with me, and but the majority of my time I have to go out and hunt effectively. I have to go out and find clients, and I have to bring deal mandates in, because if I don't find the deals, then we don't eat effectively. So my day varies. A lot of times I am out meetings. It's early breakfast at 7 o'clock with a client who can only meet me at that time, or coffees, lunches, or just meetings whenever the clients will give me time on various topics of conversation. Sometimes it's entirely social, so it's not always work. So there's a variety to my day in terms of how I interact with clients. I also do a lot of internal interaction, because marketing internally within a massive brand name platform like Ernst & Young is extremely helpful. I have hundreds of colleagues across Australia and thousands across the world. They really help me in terms of making sure the brand of the M&A team I work with in Brisbane gets out, not just in the Brisbane market, Queensland market, but actually nationally and sometimes internationally as well. So I spend a lot of time internally collaborating on various things, and then a bit of my time, I should say hopefully more than a bit of my time, but I need to invest more in my team, but my team is fantastic, and so a bit of my time is communicating with them as much as I can, although I have to admit I am still developing as a leader. Communicating with my team to make sure I can try to understand how much I can help them, bringing them to other clients and giving them as much exposure to the Brisbane market as I possibly could. So variety to my day, there's no typical day. Okay. I hope that is a good answer.
Well, I had no idea. I thought working in a big corporation like that would mean that you probably have a really steady job. But you actually are like KPI driven, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
Do you have like quantifiable goals?
No, I wish I did. That'll make my job a little easier, because I know exactly the goals I have to hit. So there's no specific KPIs set in place. There's really no exact framework within which I have to work, which is the difficulty of a role, an advisory, corporate finance, mergers and acquisition, transactional driven job like the one I have. But it is the life I've had for the past decade, and so I'm pretty used to it. And I used to work in investment banks where, you know, it's an even faster pace and higher pressure dynamic. So I've just gotten used to it. I got trained very well. So this is one aspect about the careers, which I think definitely everybody experiences, but perhaps nobody has verbalized it, which is one attribute of our success, and yours particularly, given your market is changing every moment, right? Mine is a little bit more stable, I have to say. But one aspect of our success is the ability to manage change. Ability to manage the pressure we feel when we come across change. And that change is not necessarily work-related. That change is something you have to deal with at home, and bringing that to work, because when they talk about work-life balance, that doesn't make sense to me. It's work-life integration, because seriously, how can you switch off your brain and totally compartmentalize your mind from this is my home life with my, you know, spouse, partner, and my kids, and then shut that off and then come to work and go, I'm fully dedicated to my team and my job. It's extremely hard. So just the ability to manage change in the dynamics of that, and thankfully I got trained pretty well.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Well, good to know that you're enjoying that. You seem to be.
Yeah, I like working. I wouldn't say I love every aspect of my job. I mean, today I've had a couple of glasses of wine, so I'm pretty happy with life right now. But yeah, no, there's massive things to enjoy about every single job and everything that we undertake. Whether you're a mother, a full-time stay-at-home mom, seriously, that's the hardest job ever. To have people tell you that's not a job, it's seriously, I want to whack those people in the head. So like every job you have, there's some aspects of it which is extremely rewarding, and the downside of that, all the yucky times, that's what brings the joy of any job into kind of perspective. So that's the way I like to think about it when, you know, my head is screwed on properly. So
Cool. So we know that you had a glowing career history, including some really big names. EY is one of them, and you've also worked in HSBC, Deloitte, Deutsche Bank. So how did you manage to land these like glorious jobs one to another?
yeah, I really do not like the descriptions you use to. I have been very blessed to have worked in the organization I've worked at. Absolutely. Have I had a really glorious career? I don't think so. There's so many people that are so much more successful than I have. In terms of how I managed to get into these companies, I have to say, just like, you know, a higher power really loves me. Was I very thought out when I first started my career? Absolutely not, right? I graduated from university. I did an accounting degree because I'm Asian. Okay, every Asian parent wants their child to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, and I picked one with the shortest time in liking me. So 3 years. I'm like, excellent. 3 years. I can make money and buy my own snacks and lollies because my dad controls my sugar intake. So I did accounting, and I thought, yeah, accounting. I think I knew what that was, and suburban accounting firm. And I thought that was my life. That I was going to do that forever. Like seriously, I had no thought as to what was the world out there. And I started in a suburban accounting firm in Brisbane. Like I didn't even work in the CBD. But what I think I didn't realize at the time, but looking back, I think what just made my life, my career a little bit easier is I was just very keen, okay? I was very happy to be working. I really enjoyed working. I really enjoyed learning particularly. And so that were things innate within me, and I was very happy to have that, because looking back, I don't think perhaps a lot of people have that innate kind of, you know, joy about doing certain aspects of work, and I was just lucky to find the type of work I really like to do. But the critical part, and this is the part where when you're younger you don't notice or you don't know how to influence, is also the environment around you. So the environment around me was just fabulous. I worked in a suburban accounting firm, that's sure, but the three Caucasian Australian male partners that founded that firm, they came out of one of the big four. They came out of PwC actually, and they loved the Asian culture, and so they really appreciated somebody like me and a lot of colleagues like me that have an Asian background but grew up in Australia, loves Australian culture, and we just work very well together. And you know, I was very supported. I was very, very supported. I remember when I actually moved on from there and I found a job in Sydney, I left on a day when my big boss was not in the office. So the next day, when I was in the taxi cab to my new job, and you know, into my office in Sydney, my big boss was back from his overseas travels, and he called me to give me congratulations, and I thought, this is awesome, right? I have a great boss that did not hate me because I left. So I think there's something innate within us that makes our careers, our life joyful, whatever that may be. It's not everything we love about life or everything we love about job, but there's at least one thing you find joyful about being who you are. And then that one spark of joy just changes your mind in terms of how you think about work. And I think that was what, looking back, I think that's what made it successful for me. Okay. But I can't, I give credit to my God for, you know, everything else that happened in my life.
So from that first accounting firm that you mentioned was actually quite a small suburban accounting firm, like how did you manage to go from that one to your next job, which is in Deloitte? Like, what do you think is the value that the employers at Deloitte saw in you that they hasn't seen in any other candidates?
Maybe because I was inexpensive to hire. I mean, I don't know. So how did I get the job at Deloitte? It took time. So I think that was one thing. I kept applying, and I seriously did not get very many interviews. Absolutely not. I just happened to get one. There was a few, but Deloitte was one of those interviews, one of the rare few I got a response from. So I think persistence probably paid off. And then when I went in, I wasn't too phased. So I did several rounds of interviews. I remember because it was quite scary. I've never worked in a very big firm before. And one round of interviews, there was two gentlemen, two senior directors, and one of them just came back from New York, worked in a very high pressure environment, and they both gave me a stress interview. So they were very cold, very austere, and just kind of picked apart everything that I said. And thankfully, I'm not the type of girl to burst out crying. I think if I did, I might not have got the job, but they gave me a stress interview, and I think perhaps I didn't crumble. I got the job. Yeah, so in terms of how I got it, I think it was just persistence. I did a lot of research, and it was a lot of interview failures, like, not progressing anywhere else. That gave me a good training for doing well in this one. Yeah.
That's good to know. So holding a high-level position currently at EY, what it's like when you have to make tough choices, if you can use a couple of examples to describe that, that would be wonderful.
I think I've gotten used to making a lot of tough choices. I can't think of really difficult ones that comes to mind anymore. I think, okay, so perhaps the most recent tough decision I had to make was actually not to accept a mandate. So,
A what?
not to accept a job.
Okay.
Yeah, so not to accept a client. So this particular company is a very long-term established client of one of the partners within EY. And this company wants to sell. Okay, so the partner in another department came to me and said, my client would like to sell. Would you please have a conversation with them and help them out if you can? So he was very balanced, which I really appreciated, not assuming that I would actually take the job. Right? So I had a conversation with the client, I had another conversation with the client, I looked at the information. I knew from the first time that I spoke to them that it's not something I could really accept for various reasons. So the hard conversation I had to have was with that client, a long-established client of a partner I respected and I really wanted to help. Had to say to the client, this is the reasons why, if we were to help you, this is what you'll look like, this is what you'll cost, okay? If it's within your framework or consideration, we'll love to do it. If it's not, I'm so sorry, like, these are the reasons why we can't. But let me offer an alternative, which is, if you think we are out of the running for any particular reason, I do have contacts in the market, other accounting firms. I will be very happy to call around on a no-name basis and test the market for you as to who can help you. But that for me was a hard conversation because I really wanted to do the work if I could, but for various reasons I couldn't.
Yeah.
So that was a decision I had to make because that is potential. Thankfully I didn't, but that was potentially damaging to the client relationship and to a partner relationship, right? Thankfully, it all went well, but that was probably a hard decision.
Yeah.
But to say it with preparation and with empathy, I think got me across the line. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
So when we often hear recruiters say in their, job advertisements that we want someone who has passion for what they do, we want someone who has passion for their job. So do you actually think passion is required to perform at a job?
Okay, that's a hard question. Look, if it was me, yeah, of course, I would love to hire somebody with passion for the job. But I'm being realistic. No, I don't think you should hire somebody with passion for the job, because passion fades. Alright? For the job, it fades because the job will change. You get promoted, your job scope will change. Your team dynamic changes because somebody else has an issue. Your job will change. Your team structure changes, like because somebody leaves, new members come in. Your job will change, so your job will change. So to say you have passion for your job, I don't feel like that's very sustainable. But what I would love is to have somebody that works in my team that is very clear about something in their life they have passion for. It's like, I absolutely love my parents. I came home to Brisbane because I love my parents and I want to look after them, and my dad really wanted me home. I'm happy to forgo a career in an offshore market to come home. That's fine. This is not a regret. This is a great decision for me, okay? So I'm passionate towards being a great daughter and a good sister to my brothers and helping the family. Now, whatever your passion is, as long as you're very clear on that, something external to yourself is awesome, right? Something internal to yourself is best. What do you want to be? Like, do you want to be a great parent? Do you want to be a great spouse? Something you think, yeah, that's going to sustain me because my passion is there. That's awesome. Because if you have that one passion, you can tie that to your role. Because I want to be a great parent. I want to be a good provider. So I will do well in my job. I don't want to flame out, right? Okay. If I want to be a valuable contributor to the community because I want to give back. There's so much poverty, and I want to be great in my job so I can earn that paycheck and I can give that away. That's right. To be passionate about your job, that's awesome, but seriously, that's like the rare, minuscule percentage. Like people go, oh, I want to be like Steve Jobs. I'm like, no, you do not want to be. Nobody wants you to be Steve Jobs. So passion is a wonderful thing, but it's hard to sustain.
So when it comes to team management, like how do you normally motivate your team when there are setbacks?
Okay, I'm so glad my team is not in the room right now. So setbacks. So there was recently like a setback, I would say. So as of 4 or 5 months ago, there was a gentleman that was leading my team, so my predecessor. He left, not from my point of view, not suddenly because I can read the signs. But to my team, he left very suddenly because they were very young and they couldn't read the signs. So that was a challenging situation. I won't bore you with the details and entirety of the dynamics, but it wasn't a very clear cut of, oh, Lisa's leading the team now. Not at all. So it was a very murky situation for my team members. So how I kind of had to manage through that. It was seriously the first thing, it's communication. So I buy them drinks a lot. No, alcohol does help. Yes, it does. But that's not the reason. That's not the reason. But it's more of a social situation, a semi-formal situation as well, where it's a forum. We sit down. It's a little bit more relaxed, and I make sure that I'm prepared to give them information. So I have a lot of conversations internally with the partnerships, with my M&A leaders, to ask the hard questions that my juniors want to ask, but afraid to or can't ask given their positions, and then I feed that information back and I go, well, do you have any response, do you have any questions? And I'm the conduit. So the senior people in your office are getting paid because they should be taking the bullet, okay? If they think they're getting paid because they have like technical expertise, I'm sorry, that's not true. Seriously, like the more senior you are, one part of your job is that you're really there to get shot. You really have to be there to kind of go, I'm willing to stand in front of the team to take the bullet, all right? So yes, I got shot a lot recently, but thankfully I can laugh about it now. But yeah, so a hard situation,
Okay.
something. Yeah.
That leads to the next question, which is, if there's only one thing you could change about your spotless career,
Oh, okay.
what would that one thing be?
Okay, so I wouldn't say my career was spotless, because that's a very hard thing to live up to. And I don't know if you think about it, perhaps nobody wants a spotless career. I think it's the imperfections. Really? Okay, well, there we go. For me, when I was living through the tough patches, would I have preferred that it didn't happen to me, or have made the right decision, or et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, absolutely, because it was a hard time to suffer through whatever you suffer through in the downturns in your career. But I enjoyed the rough patches, okay? Because it taught me a lot. So I was made redundant twice. I'm happy to say that out loud. I know this thing's being recorded, okay, it's going to be for public consumption. But I say that to every single one of the companies I interview with, and my current employers know. So it's true, right? I got made redundant twice, for which I'm extremely thankful. The first time I was made redundant is because I lacked the courage to resign. So again, a higher power is very, very good to me. My God just went, Lisa, you're too chicken blah, 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 to resign. So I'm gonna just make you redundant. You get paid out, go travel, which I did for 6 months, which is awesome. And then the second time, I was made redundant again. It was just a great decision that was taken out of my hands. I was very, very happy to leave, and I was hoping to be paid out. I was hoping to be made redundant, so it was very timely. And again, it was because I had taken a job which taught me a lot, but not something I should stay in forever. And so that was the second break, was when I actually took 6 months out of my career to start my own kind of non-profit thing to help uni students and stuff like that. So the bad times happen for a reason, in my view, if you learn from it. If you don't learn from it and you just kind of go into a downward spiral, then yeah, of course that's an issue. But for me, I don't have a spotless career, and I'm glad I don't have it, because it's a better story to tell, yeah? Okay.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that this little non-profit venture that you've started, is this the one, Candela?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the story behind Candela Consulting?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do a thing like this?
Yeah, sure. My family migrated around about 30 years ago, so I've been in Brisbane for a long time. Well, I've been Australian for a long time. We were probably one of the earliest waves of migrants. A lot of the families that come after us look at my brothers, I have 2 younger brothers, my brothers and I, and they think, oh wow, you 3 are so successful. I don't think we're like all that successful, it's just that we have jobs, right? So, so they, oh my goodness, you're so successful. Would you, and it's mostly the parents at first, but now it's a lot of the kids. They'll come to us, and not just me, but sometimes my brothers, but mostly me, because I talk a lot, right? So they'll come to me and go, would you please speak to my children? Or hey, would you speak to me, the uni student, just to kind of give me a sense of how I can find a job in Australia? And I'm like, yeah, of course, happy to talk. So I did that on a one-by-one basis, and in Hong Kong, a lot of entrepreneurs here, but my mistake, right? There's a lot of entrepreneurs here in Brisbane, but in Hong Kong, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, and one of my great friends, he's a serial entrepreneur. He looked at me one day and goes, Lisa, this is small fry. You should be like branding yourself, creating a platform. And I'm like, why? And I thought about it, and I thought, he's right. The reason why I wanted to do this is because I want to help people, but I can help people on my own schedule. There's a lot of organizations, universities, institutions out there that have, say, mentoring programs in which you can volunteer your time, but they're generally quite structured, regimented, and require quite a long-term time commitment, whereas I was able to develop something where my friends, and I had a lot of consulting and investment banking friends who should really commit back to society and regain their soul. So I can say to my friends, come for a couple of hours, redeem a little bit of your soul and help somebody, speak into the next generation. So that's the reason why I started it, just to, basically have a bit of a platform. And as the business model evolved, I kind of thought, I'd love to do this on a bigger scale. So I had a chat with a couple of universities, and one of the universities had I was thinking I'll go in and do my workshops. I have materials written, I'll do it for free. And the head of student services said, oh, no, we have budget. We'll hire you to work with our top 50 students and so on. I thought, this is awesome, right? I get paid. I can bring more people in to do this stuff. So it was a very small idea. It's more wanting to kind of give back, because I've been very, very fortunate. And then people in my life have spoken into it and made it bigger. So anyway, so that's how it came about. Yeah.
So you mentioned about mentoring these young graduates. What do you think is the difference between someone who is local, graduate from university, going for a job hunt, compared to a first generation immigrant, like an international student who also graduated from the same degree, did great in school, did great in uni, like what do you see is the distinct difference between the two job candidates?
Right, so not even speaking about ethnicity, but just the environment that people grow up. So this is a generalization, more from my observations, by the way, so I'm not saying this applies to everybody. But my observation is that, yes, the Australian education system is different to the Asian education system. I love growing up in Australia and actually having my education here. It is vastly helpful because it is more fluid and dynamic. It really shapes you as a whole person. It doesn't just purely focus on academics, it focuses on athletics. It's not that it's just athletics, it's just that it focuses on other things more than academics, whether it be music or anything else of that nature, community service, etc. It really helps a child to be a bit more broader as a person, to really start to find the whole of themselves earlier. Whereas with the Asian education system, to a large extent, is very closed. So that's a major difference. So when I sit on the interview panel for most of the organizations I work in because I'm very interested to do grad recruitment and things like that. I can very easily tell the difference just even by somebody walking in through the door. It is the way they carry themselves, it is the way they present themselves. So you can tell there's just a difference in the confidence. So there's a difference in the confidence. So that's the massive difference. Not to say one is more arrogant than the other, but there's just an understanding of, I can do this, versus somebody that thinks, I don't know, I might not be able to, but let me give it a go kind of thing, and just coming with slightly different mindset. So for me, when I'm speaking to a lot of the migrant university students particularly, when I'm helping them like redraft their CVs, it's not saying to them, you should write this because the grammar is wrong here. It's more, well, why? Well, so let me give you an example. So some of the kids I work with, they're great, like they get a part-time job. So these Asian migrants, they'll work in, say Gloria Jeans, like they're a barista. They'll write on their CV something along the lines of, I make coffee. I'm like, really? Okay, so tell me all about it. So basically I ask questions. So I go, so how many coffees do you make in a given period during your shift? They go, I don't know. I go, well, okay, just tell me when's the busy period? Oh, between this and this. So it's like 2 hours is your busy period in a given shift, right? So how many coffees do you make? Give me a rough estimate. It's like, oh, I don't know, maybe 300, 350. And I'm like, that's a lot. And then have you kind of divided it? So how many coffees do you make per minute? So this is like you taking orders, making coffee, making sure you get it right, because people go, I want an extra large double mocha, no cream, blah, 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 and it's, and you don't make mistakes, do you? You go, oh, not often, because you get whacked on the head by the client. And so I go, so isn't that a really dynamic, fast pace, where you have to figure out communication, accuracy, speed, right, customer service, and it's like, so all these things, and this is a thing they don't see about themselves. I go, you do all of that, because obviously you do it well, because you're still employed, right? But why don't you see it about yourself? So this is the aspect of the confidence I think a few of the migrant university students don't have. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Good, thanks for sharing that. So where do you see Candela Consulting going? Like, how is it going to be in 10 years' time?
Well, I'm not focusing as much on it at the moment as I should, but hopefully I'll get a bit more time to rededicate to that platform, and maybe in a decade's time, I do not want to conquer the world with it. It's more to try to attract some like-minded people that's willing to help others, and maybe we can build a little bit of a platform, to reach out to more students.
So this is something that I've always had on my mind. I think many professionals like yourself who are capable in business, confident and ambitious, I think these type of people eventually they all want to be entrepreneurs. It's because then they have more control and they want to be leading the direction where the business is leading. But the reality is many people actually do not go for it. So what do you think is the reason that's holding back capable business professionals from starting their own business?
Okay, let me answer that in two ways. Okay, so one is probably the way you anticipate that I might give an answer, which is look, a lot of things hold us back. If we have family commitments, the job security of being in a large, stable, established firm, not the one worrying about the money coming in, but as long as we do our job, we get a paycheck. I mean, that's a lot of security. And there's a massive risk in starting your own company. And for some people, it is actually not appropriate for them to take that risk. Maybe the time for them to take that risk has passed, right? Sometimes it's the environment around them. You don't have a supportive other half or whatever it might be. So, and then innately, maybe you just lack the courage to make the decision. There's a whole lot of things. But I would like to turn that on its head and kind of answer another way. I would like to challenge the way you define entrepreneurial, okay? We talk about entrepreneurs as people, like the entrepreneurial spirit demonstrated by those actually start your own business. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit being demonstrated by people working in established and sometimes very large organizations, right? If you're running a team, that's entrepreneurial. I like to think I'm slightly entrepreneurial because I have to make certain decisions. I'm setting the strategy because there's nobody above me here, etc. Right? Even if you're just a team member, the fact that you have a thought, you have an idea, you frame it, you research it, and then you present it to your boss to have a discussion, even if it goes nowhere, that's entrepreneurial. So it's more of the spirit within us to kind of go, I want to innovate and I want to drive change where change is required. I think that's entrepreneurial. And people call it entrepreneurial, but I like to think it's entrepreneurial. It's not every circumstance that requires somebody to step out and start their own thing. Sometimes what we may need more in certain aspects of society is to have a lot more entrepreneurs willing to stick it out in a big organization and go, oh my goodness, this is like a Titanic about to sink. And I should be like the engineer in it, like fixing and making sure all of the compartments is like sealed all the way to the top, that kind of stuff, right? So I think a lot of times like people kind of misjudge or misthink or don't think as broadly. They kind of really glorify the people that step out and start their own, which I really do, because that takes a lot of courage. But for a lot of the people that drive change, they do so within large organizations. They're unseen, but that does not mean they're not entrepreneurs, right? Yeah.
That's very insightful. Coming back to some of the key professional principles, which can actually talk to both business professionals and entrepreneurs who are here with us today. What do you think is the number one success factors in any business?
That's a hard question. Number one success factor. Okay, so this is the first thought that comes to mind, but this is not necessarily the number one factor. In my space, because I'm a mergers and acquisitions person, I see a lot of companies, or I hear a lot of ideas that gets executed. What I found very interesting in my observations over the past few years is that some of these really successful businesses are like the most mundane. Let's not even call it simple, but really mundane ideas. Really mundane, like on paper, they would not fly. You look at it and just kind of go, you want me to invest money in that kind of thing? But they're very well executed, okay? They're done well by a team that's very committed to the idea, that see the value proposition, and they're very well executed, so do it very well. So one of those ideas is like secondhand clothing. So rentals, by the way. So there's a former Deutsche Bank colleague. So his wife did this, and then it went very well. So he quit his job to help her, right? So his wife just went, I love gowns. I love the Vera Wangs of the world, which is really expensive couture, but I can't afford it firsthand. So and I can't afford it secondhand either, but I love just to wear it for one night. And I wonder where I can rent it. No place, okay? So she started a business that rents secondhand couture gowns. it's basically like second-hand clothing, not even buying, but rental. For very mundane idea, but extremely well executed in a fabulously scaled business. So I would say the first success for me, the first point of success for any business for me will be the fact that it is well executed. But that's a very simple thing to say. There's a whole lot of things that cascade underneath. Very well executed means that you have a great team that's aligned in mind, okay? That has a cohesive strategy to which they're executing toward. I mean, it's just cascade down, but good execution is probably key.
Well, great. Do we have any questions from the floor before I continue to ask the other questions? Yes.
Hi. In your role, you must see a lot of different companies. I was wondering, how do you build up your, I guess, commercial awareness, commercial instinct to be able to say that I understand this industry enough to be able to advise you on things?
Oh, hard. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think time and practice and a lot of conversation. So I covered general industrials when I was in Deutsche Bank. So effectively, I sat in a team that looked at every sector. So if I have 5 meetings in a day, there'll probably be 5 meetings in totally different sectors. Energies or mining services or waste treatment or something like that. So how do I get myself across it? I just have to spend a lot of time researching and reading. So that's, first of all, you have to put in the effort. In terms of the commercial acumen and awareness, that's where a lot of conversations comes in. Again, I think this is what I learned from a Caucasian gentleman. So I rocked up to a law lecture one day, and this is a Queen's Counsel, one of the really famous ones in Australia. This QC stood up, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm like listening from a QC. And he was giving a lecture, and he was posing a question. He goes, so this is a question, so I got hit with this question one day, and I was thinking to myself, how can I find an answer to this legal problem? And in my mind, I was thinking, hit the law books. I'll go from like this legal resource to that legal resource. And you know what he said? He said, I ask somebody. Okay? He goes, when I get hit with a hard problem, I ask somebody. And he's absolutely right. If there's someone you can speak to, they're the best resource. So you imagine, like, assuming, so like, you know, given my age and I worked in this industry for a while, if I was smart, let's just assume that I am. So I would have collected a lot of information over the decade, 16, 17 years I worked, and synthesized that in a compendium in my mind. So if you ask me a question in my space, I will be able to extract the key, summary points for you. So you have, if not the full answer from there, at least a very structured, detailed framework from which you can then go and do research and flesh out the bones, so to speak. But if you were to start researching on your own, I mean, that's also a great solution, but you take a lot more time, right? So yes, do some research, but ask somebody. And when you ask somebody, what they give you is not just the facts, they give you their view. And then you go, why do you have that view? And then from there, you hear their experience, as well as the personal bias. That's also very important when you're kind of asking an answer from somebody, trying to understand what is their personal background, their education, their career experience that might give them a particular bias to the answer. So you understand it, and if necessary, you factor that out of the answer. So that's kind of how I kind of get across the sector. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Stanley.
Well, integrity is probably the most important thing in business. So how do you find out, and how do you investigate whether this person is worth your time? And how do you find out whether they have good integrity to business?
Yeah, that's a hard one for me. I think some people have a bit more natural, innate sense to read others. I don't. I think I'm getting better. I have a natural instinct to trust people. But in terms of the integrity, I think more and more now I have a social chat. Not necessarily a work chat, I have a conversation. I hear about their lifestyle, right? Their lifestyle and the choices that they make. Then that generally gives me a good sense. and then I will investigate that by speaking to people that they know. If I have the time, I'll have multiple conversations with the person on work, on social aspects, whatever it might be. Because if people are lying to you, they generally can't sustain a lie. But a lot of times, this is where I love a lot of the research that's coming out lately, a lot of the books and writing, people kind of go like intuition, gut instinct, and things like that. It's hard to explain, but there's a reason why like our evolution from like Neanderthals is really helpful for us. There's an intuitional kind of like flight or fight response that's still hardwired into our physiology. And while we're not like facing like a grizzly bear or something like that anymore, but we innately sense whether somebody is genuine or not, or whether there's a risk in a person or situation we're facing.
Yes.
Lisa, really respect that you give back to the community and everything. Just a question, with your 18 years of career, did you have a mentor in that 18 years? And if so, was there a comment from that mentor that you want to pass down to us?
Yeah, okay, so that's actually a good question for me. I would say yes, I had a mentor. I sought one out when I was in Hong Kong a few years ago. I thought I should have one. There seems to be a lot of really smart and like, you know, successful people that have mentors. I think one would really help me, and I do not doubt a good mentor will help. I went looking for one. I got introduced to one. She was not a good fit. Okay, now not a good fit because we just didn't have a good rapport. We did not have a lot in common. Nevertheless, I really enjoyed that experience because it taught me, out of a work situation, it taught me how to give respect to somebody for whom I do not perceive any immediate affinity. Okay, she was obviously recommended to me because she's been a great mentor to other people, but this lady, it's not that we didn't get along, we just didn't have a lot in common. We still have good conversations, but it wasn't very helpful. Yeah. After that, I did a bit of reflection and I realized that I'm probably not the type of personality to really have, you know, work well with a mentor. I'm like all of the things I need to work on. I'm a bit too opinionated, I'm a little bit too stubborn. I feel like if I've thought it through and I think it's right, I think it's right. Okay. I'm getting to the stage I'm getting better at hearing people's feedback. But I must say, I'm only getting better at hearing people's feedback because I can hold my tongue. But I don't necessarily change my mind. So that's one aspect of mentoring. So I'm sorry, I don't have anything I can pass on. Okay, but I have to say, mentoring is a very difficult thing for me even to do as a mentor. I find that a lot of people say, oh, some mentoring relationship has been fantastic. I don't know how, unless it's just by a chance of really happenstance, let's just say. It needs to be a really great connection off the bat between the mentor and the mentee. There needs to be, for whatever reason, in my mind, a really great understanding immediately in terms of the framework of what you want to develop. But a lot of times that doesn't really happen. May I suggest a formal mentor? Absolutely, you should explore. Do not hear my experience and kind of go, no, right? Definitely look for a formal one because there's generally a governance, there's a structure for which to assist with the conversation and development of you. But think of everybody you meet as an informal mentor, which I do. I have a conversation with you and the way I see you and the way you react to me and the things that you say, I think, well, that's very interesting. I never thought about life, that aspect of life, that way. And that's some learning for me. So that's like educating me and broadening my mind. So I like to think everybody is a bit of an informal mentor in a way. Okay.
Good. So I remember when we had that coffee chat, you mentioned that resilience is a very critical factor, being a professional, being a successful person in general in life. But we know that resilience doesn't always come naturally to a person. So how do you develop resilience? Like, is there any training exercise?
I don't know, get your parents to dunk you in cold water. I mean, so there is a researcher, she's a US researcher. Her name is Angela Lee Duckworth. Okay, so she's done, spent a few years of her life researching this topic called grit. Grit, which is resilience. Okay. So she was looking, and she did a couple of longitudinal studies looking at children from very young age to when they hit their teens and university stage, as to what makes certain children more successful. Now that also has to be defined. And one of the things she identified was basically grit, determination, resilience. And so that's definitely key. In terms of how you develop it, look, in certain aspects, in certain of us, there's some attributes that are a little bit more natural. Look, but I like to think nobody is born with an absolute natural ability to do certain things. No one of us has an absolute natural ability to be fully resilient to the pitfalls of life. It's something you evolve, you gain over time. And how you gain it is the hard part. So some people, it's just like life knocks you out a few times and you kind of go, oh geez, I can't lie on the floor forever, or maybe I should get up, and then you do, and the next time you get hit, you recover quicker. So for some people, it is the school of hard knocks to learn that resilience. For others, it may be a little bit easier because you're a little bit more self-aware, you're a little bit more intuitive, you can probably sense it coming, so you're a little bit more prepared, so you prepare for that knock. And you might stumble a little, but you might not go down. But nevertheless, I think overall resilience really comes from the negative experiences you have in life. I'm sorry, no magic pill for that one, okay?
So gender issues are often talked about, especially in business these days. Being a young female professional working in a multinational corporate, do you feel that gender is actually an issue in the workplace?
Okay, again, I'm like the wrong person to ask because my answer would be no, but that's unique to me and the way I am. So you can probably hear from the things I say, I'm pretty kind of egotistical in certain aspects, in a lot of aspects. Okay, I acknowledge that, but I believe in myself. That was not always the case. You speak to me 5 years ago, and no one I work with will say, really, Lisa can actually stand in front of sit in front of like an audience of however many people and talk without like fainting. So that wasn't me a few years ago, but I've developed this and to kind of go, okay, so I was seriously the typical kind of quiet Asian girl in the corner. I was like, please give me a list to do, and I'll do it and I'll come back to you. But I was never in doubt though of my ability to do good work. Right? I never thought of myself as worse or less equal to anybody. I didn't think I was better than anybody else, but I didn't think I was unequal to anybody else, whether it be male, female, or whatever ethnicity. Okay? For whatever reason, that's just my makeup. Now, I don't doubt that a lot of female professionals or females in any particular workforce may definitely come across those barriers. May I, to those that do experience those challenges, if I, to the extent that I can, maybe a word of encouragement, which is, you can't control other people's stupidity. You just can't, I'm sorry, it's their problem, okay? But you can control your reaction, right? So if they make you feel put down, that's because, in a way, I'm sorry, you do allow them to make you feel put down. And kind of think if there's bullies in the workforce, whether they be male or female bullies, bullying you, like, I don't know, like, push them back and they'll probably like pop, right? So these are bullies because you allow them to be in some respects. Sometimes you can't control it, sometimes you can't say them, but maybe just kind of, look, you are worthy, that's for sure. You are worthy. Maybe nobody said that to you, but you are more than worthy to be living and breathing in your life, in your work. You are more than worthy. And so if nobody's ever said that to you, let me say that to you now. There's nothing stopping you. There is no difference between you and whoever the other person is, whatever the gender might be. You are all equal, okay? So think about that and let that be the starting point of how you initiate your days. Yeah.
And I really like that, because when the first time we spoke about this, I was like, well, finally someone's actually sharing the same opinion as I had. Because there are just so many topics in the media these days about how, just unequal think these two genders are in the workplace, but most of the time I feel like it's more of an excuse. Like if you can't achieve something, instead of looking into yourself, your own ability, the way that you do things, but you try to think, well, because that general phenomenon exists, that's why I'm not getting it, which is it's not beneficial to anyone.
No, I get that. I get that. I understand that. And I used to think definitely just entirely in the purest side of the spectrum of, dude, it's just all in your, sorry, girls, it's just all in your head. But then wisdom kind of kicked in halfway through the thought process, which is I reflect and I've been extremely fortunate. My first part-time job, I had a couple part-time jobs, but my part-time jobs, my Caucasian bosses were very supportive. They're lovely men. My first full-time job, lovely men, very supportive. And I wonder perhaps for some of the ladies out there that feel a little disadvantaged is because perhaps at some point they were disadvantaged. My dad's very hard on me, but he's never said to me, you are not worthy. Like you are below your brothers. Never, ever, right? They kind of ignore me because they go, you're fine. We don't need to look after you. We need to look after your brothers, but we don't need to. But so I have to say I'm extremely fortunate. I think partly it's innate, partly it's environment. So I can't discount the fact maybe the environmental aspect has not been as great for some of the female professionals out there. So I agree with you. I think sometimes it could be a little bit overblown in the media, but nevertheless, if there is, there's no smoke without fire. So this is an issue for several people out there. So can't totally discount. Yeah.
So at one of my previous jobs, I had a female boss who told me, as a woman, you can't have success in these three things all at the same time: children, relationship, and career. She said to me that you'll have to sacrifice one or two out of the three in order for the rest to be successful. Do you agree?
No. Okay, so I'm single. I don't have spouse, no kids, but I seriously think that's just stupid. I can name a number of my friends that have all those things and very satisfied and fulfilled. But I think it is not success to have all those things if that's not what drives you. I have, it's particularly in Hong Kong, I have a number of female friends that chose not to get married because it means freedom for them, but not freedom to be wasted, okay? It means freedom for them in terms of time. So I'm sorry, I'm Christian, by the way, so forgive me for mentioning. But they give them freedom so they can do missionary work. They can travel to the Philippines and actually work in the basically this is the ultra poor. We're not talking about below poverty line, we're talking about the ultra below poverty line people in the Philippines. So they can do that without the demands of a husband and children, okay? I have other friends that have chosen not to get married because they have full control over their finances so they can give as much of it away as they possibly can for certain charitable works. So as long as you do not waste the life that you have, I don't think there's a wrong decision, right? If you're committed to that decision, then nothing that anybody says will really dent you. If I wasn't married, I'm not married. If I wasn't married and it's not because of a decision I made, it's because I haven't been able to find anybody, and so therefore when people go, let me introduce somebody for you, that's gonna really hurt me. Of course, right? But people say that to me all the time. That doesn't hurt me. I think that's hilarious. I'm like, yes, you should try. I feel like it's really sad for the unsuspecting male inflicted upon. But please do your best. And so it doesn't hurt me. So because it's a decision I've made. So I think if you're committed to your life that you've chosen and you're not wasting your life, there is nothing that anybody can say to really dent you, right? Thanks.
I have my last question here. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question now? Yes.
Thank you so much. Your story has been so inspirational to me. I have two questions. One is that what was the most tough time in your life that you learned the big lessons from it? And like as you said, from 5 years ago, you've been changed a lot till today. And can you describe those hard times, like, yeah, what lessons you took?
All right. Okay, so there's a few that kind of ran through my mind as you were talking in terms of hard times, but let me give you one which probably doesn't sound like a hard time. Okay, so I was working at HSBC. I was the highest title, the best paid, the shortest hour, and the lowest workload in the entirety of my career, even now. Okay, so it's like the best work situation, and I really, really hated it. And I don't generally use that word often, but I seriously hated that job. Best paid, best title, everything, right? The reason why I really hated that, and that was seriously a very hard time mentally for me, not physically, but mentally for me, is just kind of go, I'm in this massive platform, it's really great brand name, blah, blah, blah. Why is everybody so not motivated in my team? And that was really hard to mentally adjust. And that was a big learning for me, to kind of go, okay, so do not take my point of view and assume that it is gospel. It's not law. Everybody have different drivers, different perspectives, and the organizations I have worked in previously hire cookie cutters, or they kind of go, we only accept people that fit into this mold. So everybody did that, and I was very happy because I was like that. But I was now in an organization where there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what they allow their people to look like. And that was very strange for me, and I was extremely unhappy for a long time. It was very hard. Hard to the extent that I almost damaged a whole lot of my relationship because I couldn't cope mentally well with it. To kind of go, I was kind of trying to ram initiatives down people's throat. That was very stupid. That was when I learned that, okay, so this is where I need to get smart about my career in terms of how I look at people, assess people, manage a relationship, have communications, and work around people.
Yeah.
So that was a really hard time for me. Now, the second hard time was like when I actually started investment banking. That was a physically hard time. But for me, I feel like the physically hard time of doing like 16, 18, 20-hour consecutive days and no holidays, no weekends and whatever, that was actually okay. I was fine with that. Like no sleep and whatever. But the mental aspect of tackling a job was what really like did me in. So that was probably a hard time for me. Yeah.
Nice. And second question is that what books have you read that really changed your life and gave you good lessons?
Right, really changed my life. Okay, so this is one I read. Every time when people ask me what books, this is the one that always comes to mind. This is one I read years and years ago. It is called Dead Man Tells No Tales. It's written by one of the pioneering forensic anthropologists in the United States. So this is before, the Bones, the TV show, became popular, and before Kathy Rich wrote her books, right? That became the TV show. So I picked it up in the airport. I picked it up because it had a really interesting cover. It was basically a skeleton and all that kind of stuff. I read it now. It was a very semi-technical and semi-anecdotal study of this gentleman's progress through anthropology as a pioneer in the field. What really taught me from that book was just the amazing perspective this person had. So he was a medical doctor by background, and one would expect descriptions to be very technical, yeah? But no. So he actually saw beyond flesh and bones into what could have been the soul that was embodied, right, within the person he's doing a forensic autopsy on, whatever. And so Bonnie and Clyde was one of the most famous serial killers in the United States. Now on Bonnie's gravestone, one of her family members have wrote a lovely little poem basically saying, "You are loved, you will be missed." So this is one of the most notorious serial killers in the US. And his conclusion from that is like, when I look at somebody, it is not what I see on the table. It is more than that. It is what they were, the whole being that they were. And so reading his book taught me to look beyond just the appearance of people. And we're often deceived by that. Somebody dressed very flash, presents lovely smile, firm handshake. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're full integrity, hey, Stan? Right? I mean, they can be a charlatan for all you know. So it is what is really within them. You kind of like see beyond the visual and go into the depth of who that person is. And that really resonated with me because I really do like people. I mean, mass crowd, I love you all, okay, but mass crowds kind of is a little daunting for me still. I'm an introvert, I'm sorry, right? Yeah, I'm an introvert, I know. People kind of go, really? Are you serious? And I'm like, yes, I am. I have to overcome that to do this. But so what really helps is as an introvert, you generally like one-on-one conversation a little bit more. Right?
Sure.
And I love that because they allow me to have a better conversation and understand you better. Right?
Yes. I'm introvert too, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
I'm sure everyone can tell.
We rule the world from statistics. Right? Okay.
Yeah, there's articles that introverts make better as CEOs.
Woohoo! Okay.
Okay, I've got my last question, which is, are you always this upbeat and positive every day?
Well, there's a few people in the audience that know me. Am I always this upbeat? I don't think so. Am I? No, right. Am I? Oh, goodness. Okay. I do not take supplements. Okay, no. Not really, I don't think. I think if you ask my family, I'm generally like pretty quiet. I love to be in my room and please have nobody come interrupt me or whatever. But when I'm speaking to people, I'm generally I become a bit more energetic. And I get that energy not from me, by the way. I get that from you. Because I do find you fascinating. And hearing about your life, what you do, what you're thinking, your aspirations, that's really fascinating for me. In my job, I have to meet a lot of people. Okay, I haven't met one that was dull. That's really weird. I'm trying to find the one that's dull. Okay, so if you're out there, please come speak to me. So I haven't found one I haven't had a conversation that was boring. So people are really fascinating. The world is really an amazing place, and humankind is woven into the fabric of that beauty. And so I'm reminded every day when I'm speaking to somebody. Yeah, and so that's where I get my energy from.
Good. Well, we're so happy to have you here today, and thank you so much for sharing your stories and experiences.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
That's the end of the interview. Thank you.
Thank you.